A very good evening to everyone who is here joining us live, as well as those who are joining us live on Facebook. Tonight we will be studying Masechtas Eruvin, chapter 8. Tonight's class is dedicated in loving memory of my dear mother, Rivka Bas Reb Shleima. If you have any questions about tonight's class, so those who are here have the advantage of being able to ask live. Anyone else can post their questions or comments below, and I will be sure to respond in a timely fashion. Mishna Aleph, Keitzad Mishtatvin Betchumin. How do we make a communal Erev Tchumin? So just to remind you, an Erev Tchumin is one that extends one's 2,000 cubits allowed a distance which one is allowed to leave beyond one's town or one's house if one is not in a town. And so we can place an Eruv at any point we want and extend it for another 2,000 amas up into the... So now the question is if we want to make one for a bunch of people or a whole town, what do we do? Maniach esachavis, one places the barrel of food and says, this is for anybody and everybody in my city. Or alternatively you can say, whoever is going to the house of mourning, or Mishna, or to the house of rejoicing, a festive. So essentially what he's doing is he's having a mind and he's making a declaration for anybody who wishes to join this Erev. So he could do a very general one, anybody from the city, or he could do a more specific one, anyone who is trying to get to a specific house of mourning or a specific house of rejoicing. Now the Mishnah continues, V'chol shekibal Allah and whoever accepts this Eruv, while it is still yet daylight, mutter, he is allowed to partake in this Eruv, to use this Eruv, and he's done because somebody had him in mind and then he agreed to it. However, once it becomes dark, asr, it is asr. Now, in the commentaries they explain that he would have at least had to have known about this Eruv during the daytime. He didn't necessarily have to say, I'm in on this Eruv. But he knows about the Eruv, and now he has the ability to join on Shabbos. But if he only first finds out about this Eruv while it's already Shabbos, once it's already Shabbos, I should say, so then it's already too late. Because a person cannot jump onto an Eruv when he finds out about it only after it is already dark, meaning to say that once it's already Shabbos.
Question. We're going for Mincha Ma'ariv, for example.
Yes.
On Shabbos.
Yes. You live in a city, so the laws, you're already in the city. Not only you're in a city, you can go from this city, which borders the next city, which is, let's say, Paramus or Glen Rock, and go. You can go from Fairlawn to Glen Rock to Paramus to Hackensack to Teaneck to Englewood to the bridge.
To New York.
You could go very, very far. Why? Probably yes.
New York doesn't have an Eruv.
No, it's not an Eruv. That's not that kind of Eruv we're talking about. We're talking about a whole different type of Eruv, an Eruv Tchumin, which allows you to go distance. It's not a carrying Eruv. Okay. Days. So how much food do you need to make an Eruv? How much? Mazin shteil sudeis lekol echad. Says the Mishnah, you need food, enough food for 2 meals for each person. What is the idea of an Eruv? The idea of an Eruv is that we're setting up camp 2,000 cubits or whatever, up to 2,000 cubits beyond, and we're saying that's where our place of residency is. Now you wouldn't, now what is the point here? The idea is that by placing some food there, you're camping out there. Now you wouldn't, now the Mishnah is qualifying this statement. How much food establishes your residency there? So says the Mishnah, 2 meals for each person who's relying on this Eruv. Now, how much is 2 meals? So first says Rabbi Meir, how much is 2 meals? Enough for 2 meals for the weekday as opposed to Shabbos. Okay, and we're going to soon discuss what exactly this means. That's what Rabbi Meir says. Rabbi Yehuda says, L'Shabbos v'le'lechol. When we say 2 meals, we're talking 2 Shabbos meals, not 2 weekday meals. Now the Mishnah continues, both of these opinions are intending to be lenient. So what's the discussion? What's the theory behind? So according to Reb Meir maintains that because on Shabbos we eat fancy foods and we have all sorts of delicacies, so we end up eating more at each meal. So because of that, he says, we're not talking about Shabbos meals, that you need enough for 2 meals per person for Shabbos meals, which are generally large meals. Rather, we're talking about chol meals, a sandwich, or whatever, smaller. That's what Rabbi Meir says. But Rabbi Yehuda says, because on Shabbos, people are actually sitting down to eat multiple meals, right? So they're going to eat. Friday night, they're going to eat. Then Shabbos, they're going to eat a hearty meal. Then they're going to have Shalosh Shudas, another meal. Because they're having three meals, so they don't eat as much. When you're eating for the weekday, you're going out to work, especially those days, most people worked out in the field, so a breakfast was a big meal. And dinner was a big meal, but lunch, who had time for lunch? It was a snack. So a meal meant 2, essentially food for the whole day. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, the meals on the weekday are bigger than Shabbos, because on Shabbos you're relying on the fact that you're going to have more meals, and so you won't eat less based on this knowledge. And so this is what the Mishnah means when it says each one of them is trying to make the measure less, because the whole idea of Tchum Shabbos is midrabanan, or mostly midrabanan, and now this Eruv Tchumen is also an invention of the Rabbanan. So they're going to be makel, because the whole point is that we should not to go too far. We're not going 12 mil or whatever it is.
They both mean the same thing.
They don't mean that the same thing. They're both looking to be more lenient. That's all. Yeah, but they mean more or less the same thing. That's the first 2 opinions. We're going to have more opinions. Rabbi Yechanan ben Bereka Eimer. Rabbi Yechanan ben Bereka says, Mikikor, it should be a loaf of bread, bipundyan, that is worth a pundyan. Now, a pundyan, let's just go through quickly. We're not going to try to memorize all of this, but what we're going to do quickly is go through the general currency of the time. 2 pundyan is 1 ma. 6 ma is 1 dinner. 6 dinner is 1 sela. Okay, so we're going from lower to higher. So let's say a pundyan is like a 50-cent piece. A ma is a $1 piece. A dinner is a $3 piece, based on this calculation that I'm making up here. And a sela is a $12 piece. Okay? So now 2 pundyan. So 2 pundyan is a ma, right? So a pundyan is a 50-cent piece. So when we talk about a loaf, how much of a loaf we're talking about, I guess? What kind of loaf? We have our veteran baker here. You can get a bilkel, whatever it is.
So one pigeon, 50 cents, it's a roll.
A roll. So like a little loaf. We're not talking about it. Again, this is when we're talking about in money's worth. Now, what this means in volume, we're going to get to that. Rabbi Shimon says, Shtei yodes, 2/3 of a loaf. You don't need a whole loaf. 2/3 of a loaf. Likikor of a loaf, misholish lekav, when there's 3 loaves to a kav. Now we moved on from the money measurement. He says, what are we going to talk money? Money is hard to follow. Let's talk measurement, which is easier because it follows in all times. So he gives a flour measurement. So essentially, this comes out to, again, I'm going to cut the math down because it's going to get too complicated and I'm afraid we're not going to follow. So I'm just going to get to the end of the math. This comes up to 6 eggs of flour. 6 eggs of flour would be a bilkel, Rabbi Yankiv.
6 eggs worth of flour.
Yeah, about a bilkel. So we're talking about a bilkel. Good. So that's what So that's what Rabbi Shimon says. So now we already have 4 opinions. One says Shabbos, 2 Shabbos meals. One says 2 weekday meals. One says 2 Shabbos meals. One says we don't need the whole meal, just a kinker, just a loaf that's worth a pidyon when there's 4 suz cost a sela. So he's giving you an amount.
To understand the volume, when we're talking about the
Challah here.
Challah, yeah. Whatever they sell in a
Showcase.
showcase, yes, small one, like.
Again, I'm relying on the expert testimony here
Small
of the
one.
baker who's telling me it's about the size of a bilkel.
Yeah, the small
The
roll.
smaller rolls.
Small roll costs $1.79.
Yeah.
This is the benefit of having expert witnesses at the class. Expert testimony.
It's a
So that's what Rabbi Shimon said.
Single serving.
I'm sorry, that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Shimon says, let's continue. Shtei yodis likikar misholish kav. He says 6 eggs volume of flour made into a roll, and that's how much you need. Now he continues. Chetzia, half of this amount, which is a 3 egg volume, half of this amount. Lifts chetzi leves hamnuga. So in order to understand this, we have to understand what we're talking about. Half of this for an infected house with tsaras. That's what it literally says here. What are we talking about? So the law is that a house that contracts tsaras, it's a spiritual malady, that it has deep red or green on the walls, or bluish green, I guess.
That's what they call leper's house.
It's like a leprous house, yes, like a tsaras house. So now the halacha is if a person goes into this house, he walks in and he walks out, so he becomes tamei. He himself has to go into the mikveh. His clothes remain pure. But if he goes into a house for a period of time, enough to eat half of this bilkel, so then he not only does he become tamei, but his clothes also become tamei, and his clothes also need to be immersed in a mikveh. So the Mishnah here is telling us what Rabbi Shimon is telling us. Half of this is the amount that the time that it takes to eat. Half of this is the amount of time it takes for a person's clothing to get tamei. And a quarter of this amount, half of a half, which is a quarter of this amount of this bilkel that we're discussing, is the amount of tamei foods that a person would have to eat in order for him to become tamei, to become posel, not tamei, posel. So it means a person who eats something that is tamei, but he only eats a little speckle, little crumb, he doesn't become tamei. A kohen or anybody who eats a morsel of food that's tamei does not become tamei. What is the minimum amount to make him posel, in which he himself would now not be able to eat truma, but not enough to convey impurity to something else? So now he himself is contaminated with the lightest degree of contamination, one which cannot even contaminate something else. So which means, so again, let's read the words of the Mishnah. Lifsel esagvia, to make posel his own body, but not something else. So this person eats how much? A quarter of this roll. He already becomes posel. His body becomes posel. And now he himself has to go to the mikveh before eating truma. But he cannot convey impurity to something else unless he eats a larger amount. Gimel. Anshe chotzer. The anshe mirpeses sheshakhu. You have people of a courtyard and people of a gallery or a porch. Sheshakhu. They forgot v'le ervu, and they did not make a eruv. So I printed out 4 copies, and because people are having trouble seeing it last time, I printed it in a bigger fashion. These pictures are all tonight courtesy of the Art Scroll annotated, anthologized commentary. So that's give credit for those who made these pictures. Here we go. So here's the pic. Here's what we're looking at. This is this is the courtyard on the bottom. Okay? And here is the gallery. So you see one door and two doors. You see two doors. These are two people who live on whose doors open up to the mirpeset, to the porch. Here you have two doors. These people's doors open to the chotzer. And perhaps somewhere in the building there's steps for them to get in or out, or they can get up to this mirpeset with these steps, with these ladder here. So now you need the Gemara really to understand what's going on here. So now let's understand these people and these people did not make an Eruv to join all as one. Had they made an Eruv to join all as one, they would, this courtyard, the courtyard on the below and the courtyard and the porch above, and all of the houses would all be considered one residence, and there would be no issue here. Everybody would be allowed to carry. But the Mishnah that we're talking about is that they forgot to make an Eruv. These people have an Eruv between the two of them, and these people have an Eruv between the two of them, but they don't have an Eruv together. So now these people obviously are not allowed to go down to the ground, and the ground is obviously not allowed to go to the top while carrying something because they haven't made an Eruv together. Now the question is this stand over here? Now it's 10 tfachim. So now, does this, whatever's sitting on this platform here, does it belong to the platform? Does it belong to the merpeset, which means that food that is here can go up to there and vice versa, or does this belong to the chutzner, on the people on the bottom, and now they could put food over here and take it down, or does it belong to both? What is the status of this platform here that is 10 tfachim high? So, kol shegvoya asara tfachim, whatever is higher than 10 tfachim here, the marpeset, obviously goes to the marpeset. So, which is the porch has access to this. Now, that's only assuming that it's close. We're going to get into that soon. But let's just give the basic halacha. If this is 10 tfachim high, so then the access to this belongs to the porch. Pachas mekan. But if it is less than this, so then it belongs to both. It says l'chotzer, but the Gemara explains it means gam l'chotzer. It also belongs to the chotzer, which means that now this is equally belonging to the chotzer and the marpeset, and so that no one is allowed to carry from either way, not from the chotzer to this post, and not from the post to the marpeset, and not from the peset to the post. No one can use this is
useless.
This is useless.
You could eat there.
Well, if it's sitting there, the food is there, then you can climb up and eat there. That's not an issue, of course.
If you had a Twinkie, you could eat there.
So pachas mekan, if it's less than this, then it's gam l'chotzer. It also belongs to the chotzer, which means since they didn't make an erev, they can't use it. Chul yisabur. Now, if a person made a pit and they took the dirt from the pit and they made an embankment around it, which was, I guess, the custom in those days, so that people don't fall into the pit. Take the dirt and you make a fence around it. Or alternatively, you have a sela, you have a rock, and it's 10 tfachim high. So we're using this similar situation as before, but right now we have other structures that are 10 tfachim high. But the thing is they're not close here. It's close to the marpeset. But in this case, it would be essentially taking this thing, calling it whether it's around a fence, around a structure, around a pit, or whether this is a rock, represents a rock, but it's not near the house. But it's 10 tfachim high. So in such a case, lemarpeset, it's a similar case, but we're going to explain the differences soon. So if it's close, because it's 10 tfachim high, so it's for the access to it is granted to the porch. Pachas mekan, but less than this, it's considered, access to this is considered also to the chotzer. And because it's considered also to the chotzer, it's now, no one can carry to it. Now, when do we say that access to it is granted to the marpesa, to the porch, when it's 10 tefachim high. When it's a rock, it's a similar case than before. Bismucha, when it's actually in hand's reach, or 4 tefachim from the marpeset, which means the theory here is that since access to this is easier from the marpeset than it is from the ground, so we give exclusive rights to it, to the marpeset as opposed to the ground. But if it's far away, it's in the middle of the yard. So now the guy standing on the marpeset, could he reach it? He cannot. So then it's equal. It's considered equally as inaccessible to both, and so therefore no one could use it. Again, as you said before, had food been sitting on top of it from beforehand, you can climb up there and eat there. But from the marpeset, it's inaccessible, and from the chutzner, it's also inaccessible. Again, why not? Because we didn't make an eruv. Aval b'mufleges. But if it's further, afilu gavei asar tvachim.
So where you will climb it from? Not from the ground.
That's 10 tvachim high. That's not that high.
No, I understand.
But if it's further away from the house, but if it's distant from the house, somewhere further in the chutzner, afilu gavei asar tvachim, even if it is 10 tvachim, gam l'chutzner. Again, the Gemara explains that it's considered gam l'chutzner. And so therefore no one can use it. The eze hi smucha, what's considered close? Kol she'ein rechoyke arba tefachim, anything that is within 4 tefachim, that's considered comfortable reach, and now you can use it. It's an extension of your porch. Otherwise, it's its own domain, and because we didn't make an eruv between everybody in this courtyard, it's off limits.
Within 4 tefachim, but not 4 tefachim.
4 tefachim and within it.
4 tefachim and within it.
Yes. Dalet Hanoisen instead of Beveis Shar, a person. Now we're getting back to. Now we're talking about where we place this eruv. So where are you supposed to place the eruv chatzeris is supposed to be in a person's house. And what are we doing by doing that? We're saying that we're all joining. We're going to talk. We put on Yaakov before for his expert testimony. We're all joining. Our chatzer goes into Yaakov's house. We're going to be in Yaakov's house, right?
And bake bread.
And he bakes bread. Good. So we're going to be in Yaakov's house. So now what we do is we take we put the eruv there, and we're all eating by him. We're all one big family. So now what happens if a person didn't put it in an actual house? A person puts it in the security booth at the door, at the entrance to the chutzner. So that's not a house. Or he puts it achsandra in a colonnade. This is a structure consisting of a roof supported by columns on all sides, with all sides left open. B'marpeset, or on a porch, or v'hadorsha. So in all of these cases,
basically a structure that you can't.
Ain't a eruv. It's not an eruv. Why? Because what did we say that we're doing? We're putting in it. We're all eating. We're all eating together in somebody's house, but none of these are considered a house. They're not a house. So what did we do? We put food somewhere, but it's not for a meal. What kind of meal you're going to have in these places? It's not considered a home in which we can now all join forces to eat a meal together. However, and a person, let's say you have a vagabond who lives in one of these places. He lives in the security booth. If this person had not participated in the eruv, so remember in previous chapters we spoke about if one person did not participate in the eruv, so he prohibits everybody else because now we're not all one big family. What would he have to do? He would have to cede his rights to the chutzner, and then we can use the eruv. So now, but in absence of that, or if he doesn't want to do that, so now we're all prohibited. So a person who lives in any of the above cases, since he doesn't live in an actual house, so had he not participated in the eruv, he's not going to prohibit the others from using this eruv chatzeris. However, if a person used the silo, which is used for straw, or a barn, or a woodshed, or a storehouse, in any of these cases, this is enough of a house that it's a house b'deichik in any of these places, and so therefore, if you put the eruv there, it's a valid eruv, and it's full eruv of full force, And furthermore, V'adarsham, if somebody's actually living in there and he didn't participate in the Eruv, he prohibits everybody else unless he sees his rights. Because that's considered a residency. Rabbi Yehuda says, a new rule. Any of the above mentioned places, and in fact, even an apartment that a person has, where the owner, there's a person renting this apartment, and the owner of this apartment is allowed to go into the apartment because he's storing things in there. Yeah? So you rent that half your house, the back of your house, but you're leaving stuff in there, and I'm allowed to go in there anytime I want to get my stuff. So the renter is not going to, does not prevent, if he didn't participate in the Eruv, he doesn't prohibit everybody else. Why? Because his residency is not full residency. The owner of this house, who was the owner of one of the other chutzers, one of the other houses in the chutzner, can go in there. He still lives there by rights of, by way of his belongings that he can go in and get from there. Mishna hey. Person who left his house and went to have Shabbos in another city, whether he be a Jew or a non-Jew, he still prohibits, and now of course he left, so he didn't join in the Eruv, so he prohibits, because he didn't cede his rights, he prohibits people from, now the guy in any case would cause this problem, but the question is, the chiddush is here, even if he's not home, he still prohibits the other people. We would have to rent his, we'll get to that some other time. Anyway, so these people, even though they're not home, a Jew and lahavdil a goy, who are not home for Shabbos, still prohibit others if they're not joined in the Eruv. Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Imer, Rabbi Yehuda says, if they're not home, they're not home. So they don't prohibit. Rabbi Yesi Imer, Rabbi Yesi says, a guy who goes away for Shabbos, he's Eiser. Why? Because he's the same way he left for Shabbos, he can come home for Shabbos. He can travel without restrictions. Yisrael ain't Eiser, but a Yid who went away for Shabbos, he's not coming back. So he's not going to be. He's not going to prohibit the others from using the Eruv Chatzeris when he didn't participate. Why? Is the She'ein Derech Yisrael Lavi b'Shabbos, because it's not a normal way of a Jew to show back home for Shabbos. If you went to somebody else's house for Shabbos, you don't usually come home. Rabbi Shimon says, "Afilo niach beisev alach lish beisetzel bite ve'iseh ha'ir ene yiseh shekfor hisil min liboy." Rabbi Shimon takes this a step further. In Fair Lawn, a person leaves his house, he's spending Shabbos by his daughter's house, 5 blocks away. Because he left for Shabbos, it's not usual for him to come back, even if he's close. He's in the same city. His house is done for Shabbos. He left it. And he's not likely to go back on Shabbos, so therefore, his Shabbos is somewhere else. He doesn't live there for Shabbos. And since he doesn't live there for Shabbos, he's not going to prohibit somebody else just because he didn't participate in the Eruv Chatzeris.
I'm going to houses from my house to Brazos. It's not like I'm allowed to go, yeah? And I'm carrying something.
We can't get into too many details here. What you're talking about is a different type of Eruv. You're talking about an Eruv that allows you to carry in a big city like Fair Lawn.
Exclude the need for this kind of Eruv?
That would preclude the need for this Eruv. Here we're talking about a courtyard with many houses in the courtyard. Even though there's a gate around the courtyard, they share the courtyard. They can't carry from their house to the courtyard and into other houses, even though there's a communal gate around this courtyard, unless they make what's called an Eruv Chatzeris. Further, if you have a pit, a cistern, that is between 2 courtyards. So, you can't take water from the cistern to either of the properties on Shabbos. So let's take a look at the picture here. You see here, this is one house and this is another house, and here, even though they didn't make an Eruv, okay? Even though they have a line down the middle, they have a fence down the middle over the cistern. You see that? Mm-hmm. Even though there's a fence here, right?
But it goes on top of the cistern.
It's on top of the cistern. Now, we're going to get to explain why in a moment. Ein memalin b'Shabbos, mimin b'Shabbos. Each side is prohibited from taking water out of the cistern on Shabbos. Ella, except in kein asule mechitza gavoya asar tvachim, unless they made an additional partition that is made to remind us that it's Shabbos, and yet we are still separating the two sides. So on the side of your fence, you'd have to hang some sort of curtain and have a second partition that allows you to do this. Bein milmaila, you could do this above, bein milmata, or in the water itself. So bein milmaila, so you have either a second partition above or one underneath in the actual cistern. So in the cistern itself, you put some sort of board that goes down in a 10 tfachim. Bein milmaila, bein milmata, whether it's above the cistern or in the cistern. Beich mitoich ognei, or whether it's in the walls of the cistern, meaning to say the water is lower down. Let's say it's 10 tfachim down or 15 tfachim down, and you're only putting this partition from across walls, but not in the actual water, and the water is lower than that. Either of these cases either of these reminders allow us to know that, allow us to take water out on Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Milmata. It has to be below. It has to be in the actual cistern. We're dividing the water with this partition. That's what Rabbi Gamliel is saying in the name of Rabbi Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says, Af Milmaila. Milmaila, whether it's below or above, he's agreeing. Rabbi Yehuda.
It's enough.
What?
He's saying either way it's enough.
Either way. Now Rabbi Yehuda holds something completely different. Rabbi Yehuda says, this partition that we're talking about should not be considered any better than the actual real wall or real fence that we have down the middle. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't have to do anything. Because the fact is that we have a wall or a fence in between. This is a real wall. But now we're going to go make a fake wall? We have a real wall that's partitioning it out. And it's above, it's sufficient. And so according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to do nothing more, and you're allowed to. He disagrees with all of this. And in a case like this, where you have an actual fence down the middle, that's all you need to do and you're good. Amas Hamayim, what about a canal? Sheyeveres b'chotzer. Now a canal is its own, you have a backyard, you have a fence around your backyard, but under one part of the fence on one side and going out under the fence on another side, you have a canal. A canal is its own reshus. It's a carmelis actually, because it's 10 tefachim deep and wide, so it's its own domain. So now, even though it's within your courtyard, you can't withdraw water from it on Shabbos. Says this, the Tana of this Mishnah, you have to, similar like we said before, you have to make some sort of partition on the income and on the outgoing. So in addition to your fence, you have to make another mechitza, which reminds us, a carmelis in a Torah you're allowed to carry from. Here it's a rabbanon that you're not allowed to carry from. So the same rabbanon are telling you, when you make an extra reminder to remind us that there's Shabbos rules and not to confuse things, and we put up a special partition for this canal.
Now this canal is also showing you, these partitions are showing you where you can go till. Meaning your
no, you have a fence around your whole property. It's coming under your fence on one side.
Even though you have a fence around your property,
you still have to put an additional on the entrance and on the exit of this canal. Rabbi Yehuda says, what's Rabbi Yehuda going to say? He just is going to have the same opinion as before. What are you talking? I have a fence. The fence reminds me that this is my property. The fact that this is a carmel, this flimsy partition should be better than my fence? No, you don't have to do anything. The fact that you have a fence is enough, and he holds that you can take water out of it on Shabbos, the canal, even though it's a carmelis technically, but it's a carmelis that runs through your Rishus HaYachid, and in this case he allows it. He says the Rabbi Yehuda says that the wall, the fence around this property is considered the mechitza. Rabbi Yehuda brings a story to support his claim. There was a place called Ovel, and there was a canal that went through somebody's property. And the Zakanim, the elders of Ovel, said, no problem, you can withdraw water. They said to him, that's not a good proof. The canal was not 10 tefachim deep. Since it wasn't 10 tefachim deep, it wasn't a carmelis in the first place. If a balcony was above the water, so now you have, let's say, a lake or a river or a stream, and you have a person's house is right next to the stream, and he has a porch over the stream, let's call it. So he cannot lower his bucket down from his porch into the stream, even though the stream is right underneath it on Shabbos. Ella, except so he has to have either a fence around his porch, and then he has a hole in his porch, so he can lower his bucket. Or alternatively, he doesn't have to have a fence around his porch, which is probably a good idea anyway. But let's say he has a porch, he has a fence below. So here you're seeing here you have the person. Let's use this picture here. So here's the person. Here's his balcony. He has a hole in there. He has a hole in there, and he has his fence underneath. It's an unusual structure, so he can lower his bucket down all the way down into the Carmelis, which is the stream below, and lift up water on Shabbos if he does that.
Well, that comes from the halacha on Sukkot.
Yes, this comes from the halacha on Sukkot, which is called Gud Aches Mechitza. Thank you so much.
It goes all the way up.
He's correct, because there's a halacha that this is considered an imaginary wall that extends all the way down.
It's like a property.
It delineates his property, so it's all the way down, even though it could go all the way down. Yeah, that's correct. So long as it's 10 tefachim makes an imaginary wall all the way down and all the way up. Okay, now what happens? What if you have two balconies and these two fellows here chipped in for the gate, or this gate or a gate on top, right? So this guy now wants to. So this is the higher one. We made this structure with the hole, so extending down for the bottom. So now he doesn't have a hole or he doesn't have a hole. So now he wants to use
two level.
One is higher, one is level. Yeah, so two different houses. One house next to the other, an apartment building.
On the side? Or
side to side, but one is a little bit higher, one is a bit lower.
Okay.
Shteim asuris achi ya'arvu. So now, although if they make an Eruv between these two, so this guy can pull water through his thing, but if he didn't, then these two are they're not allowed to carry between one porch and the next, right? They would have to make an Eruv first. So if they make an Eruv first, so they can both draw water through the one person's hole. You get it? If a person, now you have a small, teeny courtyard. You're living in a busy place, and the courtyards are very small. And it's only less than 4 amas. 4 amas courtyard. 16 cubit feet, regardless of what the dimensions are. 16 square cubits. A chotzer that is less than 16 cubit square, you cannot pour water from your house on Shabbos. You can't pour water when they're all together. It's not a question of carrot. What's the problem? The problem is that the water is going to continue out into the Rosh Hashanah because it's such a small courtyard. You would have to make a little cesspool. Thank you. That can hold 2 sa of water, because that's what the Chazal established the amount of water that a person uses. From this hole downward, meaning to say from where it's going to go out to the Rishus Harabim, so which means the cesspool can be outside your property or inside your property. But the point is, it's not going to go all the way out into the Rishus Harabim. But if a person decides to make a cesspool beyond this 4 cubit little tiny courtyard, he has to cover it. There's different opinions as to why he has to cover it. One is so that it shouldn't be a marasayan, that people think that he's pouring straight into the public domain. The other one is because it's somebody can fall in it. There's different purposes, different reasons why you would have to cover it. But the point is you have to cover it if it's outside. It's not. It's an Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, I'm kind of asking a question based on something completely different. Why would you be allowed to throw water into a field? on Shabbos.
Right, so it's an excellent question. I knew somebody was going to ask that question. The answer is like this. You're not allowed to water a garden on Shabbos, right? But a courtyard is packed in dirt.
Yeah.
So there's nothing growing there. Pouring water on dirt is not an issue.
But how do you know you don't germinate a pollen?
So
or something?
because it's such a small courtyard, nothing's growing
We're not
there.
worried about it.
We're not worried. It's packed in. You're on top of it. You're right. If there was grass there, you obviously would not allowed to be allowed to water it.
You're feeding it.
Now here's
Yeah.
the other thing. What's a of water? What's the
How much is a sa of water? That's a
gallons,
very good
or-
question.
see
I'll look at the details afterwards. I'll get back to you.
Sure.
The mikveh is 40 sa.
Mikveh is 40 sa. How much is a sa? I
How
don't know.
much is a saw?
Exactly how much, I don't know.
Maybe
Here.
the Perek had told you.
40 ounces.
So now, but if it's inside, you don't have to cover it. It's in your own property. You don't have to cover it. Now, Eliezer ben Yaakov Eimer,
That was 24 eggs. It's about 100 eggs worth. So it's about 100.
so is a 100 egg volume.
Egg volume.
Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Eimer, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Biv shuhu kamur arba amas b'reshus harabim, a drainage conduit, which is covered for 4 amas in a reshus harabim, sheifim l'seichem mayim b'Shabbos. You can pour water into it on Shabbos because the 2 sa is going to be remaining. It's going to be absorbed in this clay here, in this drain pipe here. It's not going to make it to the Rishus Rabbim altogether. That's what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says. But the Chachamim Meimrim afilu gag or chotzer me'ama, even a roof or a chotzer, a courtyard that is 100 cubits. Lo yishbech al pi abiv. You can't pour into the drain spout. Aval sheikh megag legag, or as the Gemara amends this. You could pour on the roof, and then the roof, it drains into the gutter, and then the gutter goes into the downspout, and then it goes out. Meaning to say, you didn't directly pour water into the Rishus Harabim. You poured it on the roof, went from the Rishus to the roof into the gutter, and then it went. And it goes to the conduit, and that's it. When we said earlier that 4 amas, 4 cubits, is the dimension, a courtyard and a colonnade, all of these things, the colonnade also helps with the size, meaning to say, if it's less than 4 cubits. But if you have a colonnade right there, it's those dimensions are added to the dimensions of your tiny chotzer. Yud Aleph. Similarly, 2 balconies that are opposite one of another. So now we said before that you have to make the cesspit, this pit to catch the water. Some made a pit and some didn't make a pit. And those who made the pit are mutter, because they made a pit, which is those who didn't make the pit, asr. They can't make use of this pit. Now, again, we said the pit has to at least hold 2 sa. The person who made the pit made it for sa, so he already established that he's not intentionally pouring water into Rishus Harabim. Now the other person, now he's going to pour into the chatzah there. It's a small little thing. Now I'm already reserved the rights to those 2 sa. Even if I pour in more than 2 sa, it's demonstrating that I'm not purposefully pouring straight into Rishus Harabim or pouring it into the chatzah, which is going to go into the Rishus Harabim. But you didn't make a pit, so for you, I get exclusive use of my pit, even if it's more than, I could pour out more than 2 sa, and you get to pour out nothing. Thank you so much. Please join us again next Wednesday for chapter 9 of Masechtas Eruvin. Have a very good evening.